I'm Ellen Brown, President of the Rotary Club of Harrisburg. We're part of an international community and humanitarian service organization comprised of 1.4 million members in over 44,000 clubs in more than 200 countries. Rotary leads the world in volunteer service. For more than 112 years, the Rotary Club of Harrisburg has organized impactful local service projects that changes lives and creates hope where it's needed most. Please join us at a Rotary luncheon at the Hilton, service on a Monday, or a Rotary alternate meeting to meet our members who are waiting to welcome you. You can find out more about us at hbgrotary.org. Please like, comment, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We hope to welcome you as a member soon.
We will have two speakers today representing WITF and their partner, the Steinman Institute for Civic Engagement. I told Ron the fee's the same. You've got to split it between the two of you, but we'll be glad to do an intro of both of them and then leave it up to them how they want to proceed from here. But I know you heard that Ron Hetrick would be presenting today, and he will, but we also have joining us this morning, Jess King. Jess is the founding executive director of the Steinman Institute for Civic Engagement, and she's going to talk about why she is the founding executive director and how that integrates with all the good news that's happening with WITF and the Steinman Foundation. Her work previously involved being chief of staff at the city of Lancaster, and I know her work from working in a great organization called Assets in Lancaster City, a lending agency and an economic and community development based group in the city of Lancaster. She has an MBA from Bard College, Eastern Mennonite University Bachelor's of Arts, and has completed coursework at the University of Oxford. She was born and raised in Lancaster County, has proud parents of two kind and resourceful teenage daughters. What I found most interesting is if you're interested, see her afterwards. To go with the great paintings you have over here, you can get some yarn that she sells from the fiber of Angora goats. Seriously, go do it, right, Jess? Right? Okay, and then you know Ron Hetrick, our friend, president and CEO of WITF. He's been the president and CEO since 2019 and recently helped steer and work on the merger and the gift of the Steinman Communications in July of 2023. And I think when you look for mergers and consolidations, you look for like-minded partners, and there's probably no other entity in this region that has engendered the trust that WITF may be saved for the friends at the Steinman Communications as well. So we're excited to hear about that. Ron is recently elected to the board of the Community Development Partnership and the co-founder and board member of the Information Equity Initiative and board chair of the Public Media Business Association. He's also a board member and finance chair for just down the road at Bishop McDevitt. He's a Pennsylvania native, grew up here in Harrisburg. He has degrees from Temple, Villanova, and Penn State, none of which will be represented in the NCAA tournament this weekend. His doctoral research explored the effects of corporate governance practices on nonprofit financial performance in institutions with accumulated wealth. Before joining WITF in 2020, he worked in IT, and I find interesting, helped run a family-owned technology business, ultimately preparing the company for acquisition, which will probably tie into some of the experience he's had over the last several years. So without further ado, please welcome our guests from WITF and the Steinman Institute, Ron and Jess.
Pleasure to be here with you again at the Harrisburg Rotary Club. I want to take a moment to acknowledge there are several people in this room who have been important to WITF's history. Betty, of course, Marion. We have Ski, who was a board member at one point, and also Ted Reese, a former employee of ours. Did I catch everybody who's been connected with WITF? I think so. So thank you all so much for creating the foundation for the work that we're able to talk about today. WITF may be 60 years old, but we've done so much to evolve and update with the times, and it's because of the strong foundation that you've built that we're able to do that. So thank you very much. It was a really great experience overall. So I put some pictures in there from that great time together. So we'll talk today about WITF, what we've been up to. As Ryan mentioned, we've had some really interesting news happening in our news industry, something that's not happening everywhere, but something that we're really proud of and excited to see where it goes. We'll talk about why what we're doing is important. And of course, we'll get into, as Ryan alluded to, Jess in the Steinman Institute for Civic Engagement. So WITF has this philosophy, and I hope that you all agree with it, that strong, informed and engaged people build stronger communities. So at the core of everything that we do, we think about that concept, that we're here to help and inform and engage people and bring them together. So the work that we've done for over 60 years in television and radio with PBS and NPR, of course, have helped build that foundation. But again, the work that we're talking about today is a new way for us to evolve and be of service. So for those of you that are, well, is anybody here not familiar with WITF in general? Well, would they admit it's a very good question. So WITF, just as a quick refresher, is the Central Pennsylvania's public media organization. So we are a PBS and NPR affiliated station. We also, of course, do a lot of local educational things as well. We serve 19 counties here in the central part of Pennsylvania, out west towards the Turnpike tunnels, out east towards Reading, south to Maryland, then north towards the Bucknell and Lewisburg area. About 3 million people overall is what we call our catchment. We have, of course, TV, radio, and digital. But we also do a lot of really wonderful things with the Commonwealth. For example, we actually have the contract to teach all the teachers who are doing English language learning in their classrooms for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So we're actually doing very deep educational partnerships, not only in schools like we do in Harrisburg, York, and Lancaster, but also with teachers across the Commonwealth who are doing really important things. So again, an evolution from our foundation based on the educators who had the vision to start WITF. So a little bit about what's happening at WITF these days.
I gravitate towards abstract expressionism because it's geared towards the emotional side of the art world, and I feel that art heals.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that. For us, it's always fun to share the kind of content that we create. We are storytellers at our core, so being able to tell the stories of the community around arts, education, and entertainment are an important part of our legacy. I wanted to point out just some of the recent education statistics because that's such an important part of who we are. We do dozens of events all throughout the 19 counties, but really in Harrisburg, we find downtown, York City, Lancaster City is where a lot of our under-resourced communities are at, and a lot of where we can bring services and opportunities to children and families who would not have access to that sort of that work overall. But one of the really cool statistics we're proud of is that in the last several years, we've given over 22,000 books away as part of our Ready, Set, Explore series, which included some of the work that we did during the pandemic, which for those of you that have been around was the last thing that I spoke to Rotary about, along with our partners at the Harrisburg City School District. So a little bit about the changing journalism landscape. So WITF also plays a really important role in what you would think about as local news and regional news. Of course, the rise of the internet, social media, artificial intelligence are really changing that landscape in ways that many may not perceive as positive. In the terms of newspapers themselves, over 2,100 newspapers have stopped publishing between 2004 and 2020. That is thousands of communities that are without any source of local news and information. Employment at U.S. newspapers has declined by over 57%. So basically, the number of people who are covering these communities is dropping at the same time. We are very fortunate in central Pennsylvania. We have many strong journalism partners. You've heard from Spotlight PA recently. We're a co-founder of them. We have the Berg. We have all of our local stations. We also have the Patriot and Penn Live. So in terms of Harrisburg, we're doing pretty okay. But the other 18 counties that we serve, outside of Lancaster perhaps, don't have that same level of access to news and information that one would think would be important for anybody who's an active participant in our community. So why is it important that we try to value and maintain local media? At its core, we maintain core community connections. We connect people to each other. We connect each other to the things that are happening in our community, to the organizations that are doing really wonderful things. Local media informs and educates. It gives a voice to all, especially when there's ample resources, the ability to, whether it's to post comments, to have your story told, or even in Lancaster, we have a letters to the editor section, which is vibrant, which is almost like early social media. In some ways, it's people writing back and forth and having a really intelligent civic discourse around topics that are important to the community that they're in. There's research that shows that when local news goes away, that the local economy is left worse off, that borrowing costs go up, among other things, when there's not enough information out there. Of course, we help to keep government and elected officials held accountable to the work that they're doing for all the people in that community. It has the power to connect and unify. And of course, it is a critical ingredient to democracy. So last April, I was approached by the Steinman family in Lancaster County. They were the 160-year or so owners of Lancaster newspaper, along with the many other papers that were coming before it. And by the way, the Lancaster newspaper is a 230-year-old product. So it's been around in the Lancaster community for a very long time. So it makes WITF at 60 years seem really young, which is a really cool thing. Well, the family was so vested in making sure that the local newspaper continued to thrive and exist that they went on a journey to find the right partner to make sure that it can continue. So they sought, everything from venture capital, which if you follow that, they tend to shut newspapers down and really just eke out the profit. They looked at educational institutions. They looked at other places. And for them, they found a partner in public media and WITF. For many reasons, one of which is that we have a self-perpetuating board that is part of the community. One that is made up of people like yourselves who help to make sure that and hold us accountable to make sure that the things that we're talking about are what the community is thinking about. So through a long series of conversations and negotiations, we decided as a WITF board that we would take this gift of the Lancaster newspaper and all the digital assets and everything that came with it and incorporate that into our value proposition and our service to the community. All again with that expectation that informed and engaged people would build a stronger community. Along with the gift of LNP to WITF, we were also granted from a separate family foundation that is part of their family, a meaningful 5-year seed gift. Because, if I looked at you, I'll look at Marion and Betty, if I looked at you today and said, I want to, bring a newspaper on in a time when radio and TV is already declining, like, what would you do to me? You'd probably kick me out. Well, the family, wanted to make sure that we would not cut the newspaper, that we would actually invest in making sure that it had the opportunity to thrive and survive. So this grant created the Steinman Institute for Civic Engagement, and Jess will go into the many things that we're doing in that space to really innovate this model, to think about where the strengths of both WITF and public media and storytelling and the strengths that they have in local journalism can come together and do really positive things. So I have a short video I'll show you. That was our kickoff.
WITF and LNP are thrilled to announce we are bringing our two iconic organizations together and taking a huge leap forward in how we serve our communities. We have always conducted ourselves with integrity, poise, and determination, providing excellence in both journalism and education, and we'll continue doing so at the highest standard. But it's really not about us. It's about you, our friends and neighbors, our coworkers, all of us who call Central Pennsylvania home. By combining our extensive collection of online and traditional media and community programs, we will enhance the lives of all those around us. Rest assured, WITF will continue providing educational support, media literacy, and civic engagement. And LNP will continue providing trusted local news and lifestyle journalism. But together, we will embark on a mission to expand and diversify our media platforms and educational programs. We will focus all our efforts, funding, and expertise on projects that create a positive, lasting impact on the quality of life in our communities. And we will become a magnet for visionary talent who will bring inspired thinking to local news and education. WITF and LNP are more committed than ever to the success of the places where we work, learn, and live. Together, we will work as one to enrich our communities, power local businesses, and inspire all of Central Pennsylvania.
So I talked a little bit about LNP already. They were a family-based organization, which is very rare. Today, not a lot of families still maintain control of newspapers. When they gifted it to us, we actually kept it as a public benefit corporation. So it is still a for-profit, which you may say, well, you're WITF, why would you have a for-profit? The sole reason that we kept that as a for-profit is because they have an opinion in an editorial page. And it's WITF, the 501c3, we cannot have opinions that would actually be considered lobbying and something that would jeopardize our nonprofit status. So LNP itself right now, as long as it has those pages, it's a public benefit corp as a fully owned subsidiary of WITF. So again, we've created the Steinman Institute for Civic Engagement, but just to put some numbers in perspective, I mentioned at the beginning about the steep decline of local news coverage, local newspapers. By coming together, we went from a newsroom of 10 to a newsroom of 80. In a time when, growing over 1,000%, in a time when newspapers have been declining and coverage of journalists and communities has been declining precipitously to the tune of about 32% over the last couple of years. So really incredible that we have the ability to steward this wonderful asset and this wonderful group together to do the great things that we have in mind. So with that, I'll ask Jess King to come up and talk about what we're doing.
Nice to be here. Thanks so much for inviting us to share about this. We're thrilled to be working with you, thrilled that this community is one of the largest in the WITF footprint. So what I'll be talking about is mostly going to be in Lancaster to start, but we're going to be expanding that very quickly across the more populous areas in the WITF footprint. So be looking for opportunities, or also we'll be looking for opportunities to connect in this community in Dauphin County and others around here about how to make some of this work happen here as well. Because at the end of the day, I think Ron put it really well, we're really facing huge challenges in a declining industry. Both WITF and LNP are part of local news and information channels that are facing unprecedented changes. So a big part of what we're trying to do right now, you can think about it as a grand experiment to reimagine a sustainable business model for news and information, because it is such a critical part of our economy, of our community, of our democracy. So it's, just to put it in perspective, I think it's the only industry that's named in the First Amendment. So think about that too, free press and how essential it is in our community. And so often communities don't realize what they had in a local newspaper, local media until it's gone. And what we're seeing across the country are too many places where that's happening. So part of what we want to share right now is about the value of what we do have to offer and also where we want to go. So with this grand experiment, thinking about Lancaster County as a laboratory to see what works, what we can learn, and then how we take that to other communities in this WITF footprint and beyond, other communities in the country, in Pennsylvania, that aren't as fortunate to have the resources that we have right here. So we're thinking about this working in kind of like focusing on the supply and demand of local news and information. On the supply side, a big part of what we're going to be supporting with the Steinman Foundation grant to WITF through the Steinman Institute is about supporting journalism, so directly supporting LNP and other news outlets that are essential in the community and need to leverage philanthropy as a critical element of their business model. So journalism and supporting that directly is one element, supporting the professional development of journalists and making sure that we have people who are skilled and able to tell the stories of our communities. But on the other side of the equation, the demand side, I think is where it gets really interesting. And that's about how we rethink this relationship, as I said, to create a more sustainable business model for local news and information, focusing on innovation, education, and civic engagement. So what does that look like in practice? I want to tell you a little bit more about how we're imagining what that looks like and what it could look like in action starting very soon. I've been with the organization now about 6 months. So in that process, I've also helped Ron and the team start really integrating WITF and LNP and finding economies of scale, efficiencies, all those things, and laying on this new layer of work in addition to what you've already heard about. So first and foremost, we're going to dig into research. We've already started this, really leaning into market research in this region, doing focus groups with people who engage with our products, people who don't engage with our products of all ages, to really understand the value proposition for them, and also the important elements, what they think is important, how we can deliver on that. We also want to study what works and what doesn't as we go through this experiment so we can really learn about it and tell that story to other communities across the country. And I'll also note in this that we are just joining this national effort called Press Forward that you'll be hearing more about in the coming month or two. But across the country, about 40 plus large foundations have pooled $500 million to support local news and information across the country, and really trying to create more of this unified message about the importance of local news and information, and then the ways we can support it going forward. We're becoming an arm of that at the local level, and a big part of what we want to do is create more of that local news and information ecosystem, not just county by county, but where we have connections across the 19 county footprint. So looking at mapping our ecosystem and also finding additional all the sources of news and information that are in this region, and also some people who are interested in supporting it. One of the things that I'm really excited about, it's thrilling to have some young people here and high school students. We really see that young people are completely not engaging whatsoever with traditional modes of media. So I don't want to put the two of you on the spot, but how often do you pick up a newspaper? Yeah, nope. Or even look at that. I mean, young people are increasingly getting their information from social media, from TikTok, I won't put you on the spot about where you get your information, but a big part of what we want to do with experimenting in this space is start a high school newsroom where we pull students from every school district in Lancaster County into one newsroom, support them with some editorial backbone and training so it becomes some educational, real-life training for them in communications and journalism. And then, just make sure that they don't get themselves in trouble with like legal and libel and all those things, but really give them editorial, like carte blanche to cover what they want to cover and do it in the ways they want to. And through that process, we're going to learn so much about what works and what doesn't to engage the next generation of news and information consumers. And it's so essential to a sustainable business model moving forward. We're tapping into the rich history that Ron laid out about WITF's educational resources in this community to create some new programs around media literacy and supporting not just young people, but all of us in learning more about how we tell what's true from what's not. So thinking about how we do that in schools, but also in places like bars and pubs, and bringing in gamification, like gamifying the idea of, is this real or is this real? And how can you tell? And practicing some of those skills together, growing some of those skills, and really thinking critically as a community about how we understand our sources of information and what to trust and what not to. We're going to be providing digital access to LNP to every school in Lancaster County, including elementary, middle school, and high school and college, and also provide some resources to teachers, including professional development for teachers in media literacy, and also doing teaching local. So using examples of articles that are in the newspaper about our local community, about government, about anything that we cover in LNP, and helping teachers see it as an opportunity to teach social studies, English language, arts, and other things that they can integrate that as a teaching tool. So that's another thing we'll be leaning into. We'll be convening and connecting and pulling people together to talk about ideas, to try new things. So we're honored to have a board of managers for the Steinman Institute that includes national thought leaders. One of them is David Green, who graduated from McCaskey High School in Lancaster and has a deep, rich history there. He was the former morning edition host of NPR and now hosts a podcast called Left, Right, and Center. I'd highly encourage you to check it out. It's a way of modeling civil discourse across, as you can imagine, left, right, and center, and having positive conversations, not argumentative conversations. We're bringing him to Lancaster and are going to be partnering with some friends at Franklin and Marshall College and McCaskey to pull students together to have them essentially pitch a news product of the future to David and to our newsrooms to maybe do a little bit of market research to start this youth newsroom. So excellent. Great. So there might be some great ways for you to plug into this. So we'll be convening and connecting for young people and all ages, really. A couple more things I want to mention, and then we'll shift to Q&A. I mentioned civil discourse. I don't know about all of you, but I know I'm concerned about the level of vitriol that we see in our community and lack of productive conversations about what we have in common, because I really do believe that as a community, we have more in common than we don't. Groups like this model that. You know what this looks like. We're working on a partnership with StoryCorps, which is they started through NPR. They have a program called One Small Step, and it really is one small step, thinking about it as an entry point, where they match people across political and ideological divides for a facilitated conversation about what they have in common. And that's it. And they, through that, get better understanding of each other, and their stories are the ones that then get elevated through broadcast and print. And then we have more stories of those of us who have things in common and not the voices you see at the polar opposites that are so often reflected in national media. Part of what we want to do and what local media does so well is reflecting those voices at the local level where there's so much more in common. And then the last thing I'll mention is a really interesting, maybe a little nerdy, but I think pretty cool approach to embodying civic engagement. And it's something called deliberative democracy or citizens' assemblies. We're working with some professors at Franklin and Marshall College. Again, you'll probably have a chance to work in this if you're interested in government, where they've done about 3 so far, one with WITF that's been across this region, 2 in Lancaster County. It's an idea where you pull together a representative sample of our community. So it's really reflecting the depth and diversity of our communities, not just the folks who will opt in or come to a public meeting, but the folks who maybe don't have the time or capacity or ability to participate. So we get all the barriers out of the way. We compensate them for their time on a Saturday. We provide transportation and childcare if they need it, and translation if they need it, to pull the folks together, dig into an issue that's important to them as a community, and then they learn about that through presentations of experts, often industry experts or university professors, and then they have a conversation, they deliberate on what they think solutions to that challenging issue might be, to then share with decision makers in the community. It's again, a model of civil discourse. It's a model of collective decision-making and problem solving in ways that actually work. In these processes, we find that 70 to 90% reach consensus. So how beautiful is that when we think there are these tricky issues that we as a community can't solve, and yet here's a model where folks are doing this with their neighbors and coming up with solutions that they agree on, and then doing journalism out of that, telling those stories and making sure those voices are elevated in our civil discourse. So I think with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Ron, and then we'll welcome your questions.
Thank you, Jess. I hope you enjoyed hearing about how WITF is reimagining our service in the community. Certainly founded in the roots that we were so lucky to be our origin story, so to say, but in a way that now really truly connects to inform and engage people. Before we do question and answers, I'll leave this up here. We have a wonderful reverse debate coming up for the candidates of the 10th Federal District here next Monday night. Thank you to Hack. I don't think Ski is here anymore. But we're going to be there doing a reverse debate, having all the candidates come together to basically talk directly to people, and then they will actually go back to the stage after that Q&A to engage the community in a way that is really thinking about and answering what the people want to hear, not their stump speeches, not the things they want you to hear. So please consider joining that if you're not already. All right, well, thank you so much for your time.